McDonald's employee fired for giving Denzel Washington free food. What he does next is stunning. The rain came down in sheets, turning the streets of Los Angeles into a slick maze of reflections. Neon signs from convenience stores and fast food joints flickered in puddles like restless ghosts. The corner McDonald's glowed like a beacon against the gray night, its yellow arches cutting through the downpour. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of grease and coffee. The restaurant buzzed with life. Families huddled over happy meals, teenagers laughing too loudly in the back booth, delivery drivers rushing in and out with brown paper bags in hand. Behind the counter, Ethan Rivera moved like clockwork. At 23, he had mastered the art of efficiency. Head down, smile ready, voice steady no matter how long the line grew. Before we get into the story, comment below where you are watching from today. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Welcome to McDonald's. How can I help you? He asked for the 100th time that evening. A tired-looking woman with two restless kids rattled off an order. Ethan tapped it into the register, his hands moving almost on their own. He barely noticed the sting in his lower back from standing all day or the ache in his shoulders from lifting crate after crate in the morning delivery. But out of the corner of his eye, he caught sight of something that broke his rhythm. An elderly woman in a threadbare coat shuffled past the windows, clutching a battered grocery bag to her chest. She stopped at the entrance, hesitated, and turned away as if ashamed to come inside. Ethan frowned. He'd seen her before. Mrs. Harlow, he remembered someone calling her once. She'd been hanging around the neighborhood for months now, always quiet, always alone. As Ethan handed the woman her change and tray, his gaze flicked back to the door. That's when he noticed the man. Denzel Washington stood there holding an umbrella, watching Mrs. Harlow like he'd been frozen in place. He wasn't wearing the sharp tailored suits Ethan had seen him in on TV or the big screen presence that made entire theaters fall silent. Tonight he looked like any other man. Gray hoodie, dark jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low. If you didn't look twice, you'd never guess it was him. But Ethan looked twice. Denzel stepped forward, calling out gently, "Mom? Let me help you." Mrs. Harlow froze, visibly startled, then shook her head vigorously. No, I don't want trouble." "You're not causing any trouble," Denzel said softly. "How about we get you a warm meal? My treat." She looked at him, eyes darting like a trapped bird. Then slowly she nodded. Ethan's hands tightened on the counter. Something about the quiet dignity in Denzel's voice hit him harder than he expected. He watched as Denzel guided Mrs. Harlow inside, helping her sit near the heater. The rain dripped from her coat and pooled around her worn-out shoes. Ethan's coworker nudged him. "Dude, is that who I think it is?" Ethan didn't answer. He was already stepping away from the register, pulling out his wallet. By the time Denzel reached the counter, Mrs. Harlow was wiping her hands nervously on a napkin. "May I take your order?" Ethan asked, forcing his voice to sound neutral. Denzel looked up, his sharp eyes meeting Ethan's. There was an intensity there, not intimidating but piercing. "Whatever she wants. And a cab to get her home." Mrs. Harlow shook her head again. Too much. "Ma'am, please, allow me." Ethan tapped in the order, added a coffee, and rang up the total. As Denzel reached for his wallet, Ethan spoke before he could stop himself. "She's going to be okay. Thanks to you." Denzel gave him a small smile. "We all need someone to help us when the world turns cold, don't we?" Ethan swallowed hard, fighting the lump rising in his throat. This man wasn't just giving her food, he was giving her a moment of dignity. When Denzel paid and turned to rejoin Mrs. Harlow, Ethan's coworker leaned in. "Man, that's crazy. He's even cooler in real life." Ethan nodded absently, his eyes still following Denzel. A thought sparked in his mind, quick, impulsive, but impossible to ignore. 10 minutes later, Denzel was back at the counter. Mrs. Harlow was finishing her meal, her frail hands wrapped around the steaming cup of coffee. "Could I get a small fry and a drink?" Denzel asked. Ethan hesitated for half a second. Then he grabbed a tray, filled it, and slid it over the counter without touching the register. "This one's on me, sir," Ethan said quietly. Denzel raised an eyebrow. "You didn't have to do what you did," Ethan continued, his voice low so his manager wouldn't hear. "But you did. So, consider this my thank you." For a moment, Denzel just looked at him. Then a slow, approving smile spread across his face. "You didn't see anything," Denzel said. Ethan grinned faintly. "No, sir. I saw everything." Denzel tipped his cap. "What's your name?" "Ethan." "Well, Ethan, thank you." He walked back to Mrs. Harlow's table, leaving Ethan with a strange, unshakable warmth in his chest. Later that night, the warmth didn't last. Mr. Gaines, the store manager, was pacing in the office, his jaw tight. He replayed the security footage on the small monitor, jabbing his finger at the screen. "Do you see this? Free food. Unauthorized. You know corporate checks these cameras every night." Ethan stood stiffly in the doorway, still in his uniform, rainwater dripping from his jacket. "It was a small fry and a drink," he said. "Not even $2 worth." "That's not the point," Gaines snapped. "Company policy is crystal clear. Nothing is free unless it's approved. You stole from us." "I didn't steal," Ethan shot back, heat rising in his voice. "I was thanking a man for helping someone who needed it. That's worth more than—" "You're done." Ethan froze. "What?" "Effective immediately. Turn in your badge and apron." For a moment, all Ethan could hear was the rain hammering against the office window. Then the words sunk in like a blade. "You're firing me? Over this?" "You brought it on yourself," Gaines said coldly. "Now get out before I call security." Ethan walked home through the storm, his head down, uniform clinging to his skin. When he opened the door to their tiny apartment, Clara looked up from her homework. "You're soaked. What happened?" "Nothing," Ethan lied with a weary smile. "Just needed a break from that place." But in his pocket, his hands curled into fists. And across the city, Denzel Washington was sitting in his study, staring at his phone as his assistant played him a video of Ethan's firing. Denzel's expression darkened. That kid didn't deserve that. The rain had stopped by morning, but the air still carried the heavy scent of asphalt and grease as the city woke up. Somewhere in a corporate tower miles away, McDonald's regional headquarters buzzed with activity. A dozen executives sat around a long mahogany table, their eyes fixed on a large monitor at the front of the room. On screen, grainy black and white security footage played on a loop. Ethan Rivera, in his McDonald's uniform, slid a small tray with fries and a drink across the counter. The timestamp in the corner flickered as Ethan leaned forward, speaking to the man in the hoodie and baseball cap, Denzel Washington. "Pause it there," said a stern voice. Mr. Gaines, the regional manager for the area, stood with his arms folded. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, but his eyes were sharp and cold. He didn't see Ethan's nervous smile or the quiet gratitude exchanged between the two men. All he saw was a transaction outside the system. This employee handed out free food without authorization. It doesn't matter who the customer was. It's theft. One of the younger executives shifted in his seat. "Sir, it was a small fry and a drink. Barely $2. "That's not the point," Gaines snapped. "If we let this slide, every employee will start giving away food to every sob story that walks in. Policies exist for a reason." "But sir, we're talking about Denzel Washington," the younger executive ventured. "If this goes public, Denzel Washington isn't going to care about some fry cook." Gaines cut him off. "And even if he does, we'll release a statement. Stick to the handbook. That employee is terminated effective immediately. I'll draft the memo." The room fell silent. At the same moment, across town, Ethan sat slumped at the kitchen table in his tiny apartment. The place smelled faintly of instant noodles and cheap air freshener. Clara, his 14-year-old sister, moved quietly around him, trying not to make too much noise. She poured cereal into a chipped bowl and set it in front of him. "You didn't sleep?" she asked softly. Ethan didn't look up. His McDonald's apron lay folded on the table like a shroud. "They fired me," he said finally, his voice flat. Clara froze, the cereal box in her hands. What? Why? They said I gave away food. Called it theft. Her brows furrowed. You're kidding, right? I mean, it's McDonald's. You've worked there for years. Ethan shook his head. Doesn't matter. Policy is policy. But that's ridiculous, Clara said, her voice rising. You were just being nice. Everyone knows how hard you work. Ethan pushed the cereal bowl away and rubbed his face. It's fine. I'll figure something out. No, it's not fine, Clara said, her eyes wet. We can't lose this place, Ethan. You know we can't. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I'll get another job. Don't worry about me. Just focus on school. Okay? But in his gut, a deep unease twisted like a knife. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Elsewhere, Denzel Washington sat in his quiet study, the morning sun spilling across the room's hardwood floors. His assistant, Malcolm, hovered nearby, holding a tablet. You need to see this, Malcolm said. Denzel set down his coffee and leaned forward as Malcolm tapped the screen. The video played, Ethan handing him the tray, the words exchanged, the warm smile. Then came the headline, McDonald's employee fired after giving Denzel Washington free food. Denzel's brow furrowed as he watched. They fired him for that? He asked quietly. Malcolm nodded. Corporate policy, apparently. The kid's name is Ethan Rivera. 23. Lives with his younger sister. Single-income household. Denzel stared at the video, then back at Malcolm. His voice, when he spoke, was low but firm. Find him. Malcolm hesitated. You want me to? Find him, Denzel repeated. Today. By the time Denzel set out, the story had gone viral. Social media lit up with outrage. McDonald's fires employee for being kind? Disgusting. He gave fries to Denzel Washington, not a war criminal. What is wrong with these people? Boycott McDonald's. Compassion isn't theft. But in the corporate offices, Mr. Gaines was unmoved. Damage control, he barked into his phone. Issue a statement. While we value kindness, employees must adhere to corporate policy to ensure fairness for all customers. That should shut them up. Didn't. By evening, protesters gathered outside the McDonald's where Ethan had worked, waving signs, kindness over corporations, and rehire Ethan. But Ethan didn't see them. He sat in the dark apartment with Clara, staring at his phone as it buzzed with messages from friends and strangers alike. Some offered sympathy. Others called him an idiot for risking his job. Then came a knock at the door. Don't answer it, Clara whispered nervously. But Ethan was already moving. He opened the door to find Denzel Washington standing there, rain dripping from his jacket.
Ethan Rivera,
Denzel asked. Ethan's jaw dropped. Can we talk? Denzel said. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, unable to process what he was seeing. Denzel Washington, an icon whose face graced movie posters and magazine covers, was standing in his dimly lit apartment hallway, looking as calm and composed as if he'd been invited. Clara peered around her brother's shoulder, her eyes wide. Ethan, is that? It's okay, Denzel said softly. I'm not here to cause trouble. Can I come in? Ethan stepped aside without a word, still stunned. Denzel entered, glancing around the modest apartment. The wallpaper was peeling in spots, and the furniture looked secondhand, but everything was neatly arranged. Clara quickly cleared a pile of homework from the small kitchen table, embarrassed. Have a seat, Ethan said awkwardly. Denzel shook his head. You've been through enough today. I won't stay long. Clara found her voice first. Why are you here? I mean, it's not every day Denzel Washington shows up at our door. Denzel's expression softened. I came because of what happened. I saw the video. Ethan's jaw tightened. Of course, that's all over the internet now. You shouldn't have been fired for that, Denzel said. You did something kind. You noticed someone in need and you didn't look away. That means something. Ethan laughed bitterly. Try telling that to McDonald's corporate. To them, I'm just another disposable worker. Not to me, Denzel said firmly. And not to a lot of people out there. Clara leaned forward, gripping the edge of her chair. You mean, people are talking about this? Thousands, Denzel replied. You've struck a nerve. The world's starving for decency, and they see it in you. Ethan shook his head. All I did was give away some fries and a drink. Sometimes it's the small things that remind people what's right, Denzel said. Which is why I'm here. Ethan frowned. Why? I want to help you, Denzel said simply. Ethan blinked. Help me how? Denzel took a step closer. First, I want to make sure you and your sister don't have to worry about rent or food. But more than that, I want to give you a chance to take what you did and turn it into something bigger. You have a heart that this world needs more of. Clara's eyes filled with tears. You're serious? As serious as it gets, Denzel said. But there's more. I'm working on something, a foundation that celebrates acts of kindness in the service industry. Too many corporations punish compassion. I want to change that. Ethan stared at him, struggling to comprehend. Why me? Because you didn't think anyone was watching, but you still chose kindness, Denzel said. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. For a long moment, Ethan sat silent, his hands clenched in his lap. Then he looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you want me to do? I want you to stand with me, Denzel said. There's a charity gala in 2 days. I want you there on stage with me. Let's tell your story and launch something that will change lives. Clara gasped. A gala? Like, with rich people and cameras and everything? Denzel smiled faintly. Yes, and I'll take care of everything. You'll have a car, clothes, whatever you need. Ethan swallowed hard. I don't know.
I'm nobody.
Not to me, Denzel said. And not to the people you'll inspire. 2 days later, Ethan stood in front of a full-length mirror in a hotel suite, tugging nervously at the sleeves of a crisp black suit. I feel like an imposter, he muttered. You look amazing, Clara said, adjusting his tie. Stop fidgeting. Denzel said this is about celebrating you. Ethan took a deep breath. He still didn't understand why Denzel was doing all this. But when he stepped into the waiting SUV and saw the flashing lights of the gala ahead, he realized there was no turning back. At the gala, the air hummed with anticipation. The ballroom sparkled with chandeliers, and the rich scent of fine wine filled the air. Cameras flashed as celebrities, philanthropists, and journalists mingled in designer clothes. Denzel stepped onto the stage, the crowd instantly silencing. Tonight isn't about me, he began. It's about a young man who reminded us all that kindness isn't a weakness. It's a strength. He gestured toward Ethan, who stood nervously at the edge of the stage. Ethan Rivera was fired for giving a stranger a small act of kindness. But that act made the world stop and pay attention. The crowd erupted in applause as Ethan walked to Denzel's side. Ladies and gentlemen, Denzel continued, I'm proud to announce that Ethan will be joining me as we launch the Meals of Respect Foundation, honoring workers like him who choose compassion over policy. The room roared with approval. Ethan looked out over the sea of faces, his heart pounding. You don't fire someone for doing what's right, Denzel said, his voice strong. You elevate them. The crowd inside the ballroom erupted into thunderous applause. Camera flashes bathed the stage in harsh white light as Ethan stood frozen beside Denzel. For a moment, he wasn't the underpaid fry cook who had been fired in humiliation 2 days ago. He was a man at the center of something bigger than himself, a wave of emotion and admiration washing over him. Denzel placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder and leaned in slightly. Take it in, Ethan. This is your moment. Ethan swallowed hard, his heart hammering in his chest. He felt like an imposter standing in front of the glittering crowd in his rented tuxedo, but there was no turning back now. Denzel stepped forward, raising his hands for silence. Tonight, we are here to launch something that will outlive us all. A movement built on the radical idea that kindness should be rewarded, not punished. This young man behind me, Ethan Rivera, reminded us of that truth with a simple gesture. The audience watched intently as Denzel's voice rang out across the hall. He was working the late shift in a McDonald's when he saw someone do a quiet good deed. In response, he offered a small thank you, a few fries and a drink, without asking for applause or attention. But instead of celebrating his humanity, his employer fired him. That's the world we live in. A ripple of murmurs and disapproving headshakes moved through the crowd. Some people were already pulling out their phones, tweeting and posting live videos of Denzel's speech. But tonight, Denzel continued, we say no more. No more punishing compassion. No more punishing the working class for showing heart in a system that demands they act like robots. That ends now. The screen behind him flickered to life, displaying the logo for the new foundation. Meals of Respect. Below it, words in bold letters read, honoring acts of kindness in service. Ethan is the first recipient of our recognition, Denzel said. But he will not be the last. With your support, we will reward acts of kindness across the country. We'll provide scholarships, career opportunities, and even legal aid for workers who stand up for decency. The crowd clapped louder this time. A few people even stood. Denzel turned to Ethan and gestured toward the microphone. Would you like to say something? Ethan froze. His palms were sweaty, his mouth dry. He hadn't expected to speak. You don't have to if you don't want to, Denzel said quietly. Ethan took a deep breath. I don't know what to say. Speak from your heart, Denzel encouraged. Ethan stepped forward, his voice shaky but growing stronger as he spoke. I didn't think anyone would notice what I did. I wasn't trying to make a statement or go viral. I saw someone do something good, and I thought they deserved something good back. That's all. He paused, looking out at the crowd. But the truth is, I've seen people every day in fast food jobs do little acts of kindness. They let kids have extra sauce packets. They slip a free coffee to an exhausted nurse. They give a homeless man a cup of water without asking questions. These are the things that make us human, but corporations don't care about that. To them, we're all replaceable. There was a murmur of agreement in the room. I thought getting fired was the worst thing that could happen, Ethan continued. But maybe it was the best. Because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be standing here, and maybe this foundation wouldn't exist. So, thank you. And if you ever see someone being kind, don't let them get punished for it. Stand up for them. We all need each other. The applause this time was deafening. People leapt to their feet. Some had tears in their eyes. As the gala continued, social media exploded. Denzel Washington just hired the McDonald's kid as his personal chef. Legend. Meals of Respect is the movement we didn't know we needed. McDonald's punished kindness. Denzel turned it into a revolution. Even news networks began running segments about the gala. Ethan's face flashed across TV screens with captions like, Fast food worker fired for kindness. Honored by Denzel Washington. Back at McDonald's corporate HQ, the atmosphere was far less celebratory. Mr. Gaines stormed into the conference room, tossing his phone onto the table. This is a disaster, he barked. Denzel Washington just made us the villains of the year. The younger executive spoke up nervously. Sir, the hashtag boycott McDonald's is trending worldwide. Our stock dropped 3% in the last hour. I told you this was nothing to worry about, Gaines snapped. Now every bleeding heart in America is acting like that fry cook is a saint. The CEO, a stern woman with icy eyes, stood and glared at Gaines. You assured me this was handled. Instead, you've sparked a PR nightmare. He broke policy, Gaines argued. We had no choice. You always have a choice, the CEO said coldly. And now we're paying for yours. Meanwhile, Ethan sat backstage at the gala, his head spinning. He could still hear the roar of applause echoing in his ears. Clara sat beside him, practically bouncing in her seat. You were amazing, she whispered. I felt like I was going to throw up the whole time, Ethan admitted. Didn't look like it, Denzel said as he stepped into the room, smiling. Ethan stood. I don't know how to thank you for all this. Don't thank me yet, Denzel replied. This is just the beginning. I meant what I said up there. You're going to culinary school. And when you're done, you're going to work with me. Ethan stared at him. You're serious? Dead serious, Denzel said. You've got heart, Ethan. That's rarer than skill. I can teach you the rest. Clara's eyes sparkled. You're going to be a chef. Ethan shook his head, still dazed. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Denzel said with a grin. Yes, Ethan replied without hesitation. As the night wore on, Denzel watched Ethan and Clara from across the room. He saw in Ethan the same quiet resilience he'd witnessed in countless people over the years, the ones who worked tirelessly in the shadows and got nothing in return. But not this time. This time the world had noticed. The morning after the gala, sunlight streamed through the blinds of Ethan's new hotel suite. For the first time in months, he woke up without the tight knot of worry in his chest. The events of the previous night still felt like a dream. The standing ovation, the cameras flashing, Denzel's steady hand on his shoulder. Clara sat cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through her phone. Ethan, you're everywhere, she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. Everywhere, Ethan asked groggily, rubbing his eyes. Look, she held up her phone. Video clips of the gala flooded her feed. There was Denzel's speech, Ethan's hesitant but heartfelt words, and headlines splashed across every major outlet. From fry cook to hero of kindness, Ethan Rivera's story goes viral. Denzel Washington launches Meals of Respect to honor service workers. McDonald's faces growing backlash over workers firing. Clara grinned. You're trending, big brother. Ethan stared at the screen. It didn't feel real. Just 3 days ago, he'd been fired like he was nothing, tossed aside by a company he'd given years of his life. Now strangers online were calling him an inspiration. I don't know how to feel about all this, he murmured. Feel proud, Clara said firmly. You deserve this. At McDonald's corporate headquarters, the mood was anything but celebratory. The CEO paced the conference room like a general preparing for battle. Damage control isn't working, she snapped. Every hour, we're losing more ground. Our reputation is in free fall. PR executive cleared his throat nervously. Ma'am, the hashtag boycott McDonald's has reached over 50 million impressions in less than 24 hours. Influencers are posting videos dumping their McDonald's meals in the trash. Even some of our celebrity partners are distancing themselves. The CEO's jaw tightened. What about Gaines? He's the one who fired the kid. Public pressure is mounting for us to fire him, the PR executive said cautiously. Do it, the CEO ordered coldly. Effective immediately. Release a statement condemning his poor judgment and emphasize our commitment to supporting employees. Yes, ma'am. And schedule a meeting with our legal team, she added. I want options for suing this Meals of Respect Foundation if they so much as hint at slander. The executives nodded, scribbling notes as the CEO fixed her icy glare on the screen replaying clips from the gala. Denzel Washington wants a war? We'll see how far his Hollywood charm gets him when the lawyers come knocking. Meanwhile, Ethan and Clara were back at the foundation's offices in downtown LA. The place buzzed with activity. Volunteers unpacking boxes, designers printing banners, phones ringing non-stop. Denzel walked in, radiating calm authority. You two ready for the next step? Ethan looked up from the paperwork he was signing. The next step. Press conference this afternoon, Denzel said. We're officially launching the first round of Meals of Respect grants. We'll recognize 10 service workers from around the country who went above and beyond for their customers. Ethan blinked. You've already found 10 people? Malcolm and the team worked through the night, Denzel said. Kindness isn't rare. It's just rarely acknowledged. We're going to change that. Ethan glanced nervously at Clara. I'm not sure I'm cut out for all this attention. You weren't cut out to be stuck behind a register either, Denzel replied gently. But you did that. You survived. And now it's your time to thrive. Clara smiled. He's right, Ethan. You can do this. The press conference was held in a bright, airy community hall packed with journalists, photographers, and curious onlookers. Banners with the Meals of Respect logo hung from the walls. Denzel took the stage first. "Good afternoon," he said, his deep voice carrying across the room. "When I announced this foundation 2 nights ago, I had no idea how quickly it would resonate. The flood of stories we've received proves what I've believed all along. Kindness is not weakness. It is the strength that holds our communities together." The crowd murmured in agreement. "Today, we're recognizing 10 incredible individuals who exemplify this spirit," Denzel continued. "But none of this would be possible without the man who inspired it all. Please welcome Ethan Rivera." Applause filled the hall as Ethan stepped forward. He adjusted the microphone nervously, then spoke. "2 days ago, I thought I'd lost everything. Now I'm standing here because of one small act of kindness, mine and someone else's." He glanced at Denzel. "This isn't about me. It's about every worker who chooses humanity over policy, even when no one's watching." Cameras flashed as he spoke. "To those workers, I say, we see you, we honor you, and we'll fight for you." The applause was louder this time, and Ethan felt a surge of determination. But in the shadows of the corporate world, McDonald's wasn't finished. Mr. Gaines sat in his office packing his belongings into a cardboard box. His phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. A deep, unfamiliar voice responded. "Mr. Gaines, we understand you've recently been made a scapegoat for corporate decisions." "Who is this?" Gaines demanded. "Let's just say we have a mutual interest in discrediting Mr. Rivera and Mr. Washington. How would you like to get even?" Gaines paused, a cold smile creeping across his face. "Go on." The air inside the Meals of Respect community kitchen was alive with energy. Volunteers moved briskly, stacking crates of fresh produce, stirring giant pots of soup, and arranging tables for the opening ceremony. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows, bouncing off the newly polished floors. The smell of baked bread and herbs filled the air, warm and inviting. Ethan stood near the entrance, watching it all unfold. He wore a crisp white chef's coat, his name embroidered neatly on the chest. For the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged somewhere, like he was doing work that mattered. Clara appeared at his side, her eyes wide with pride. "This place looks amazing," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "Yeah, it doesn't feel real yet." Before she could reply, Denzel entered the room, his presence commanding yet comforting. The chatter quieted instantly. He walked over to Ethan and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You ready?" Denzel asked. Ethan nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Good. Today isn't just about this kitchen. It's about sending a message to the world." Outside, reporters and cameras crowded around the entrance. Banners reading Meals of Respect grand opening hung above the doors. The foundation had already sparked a movement, with similar kitchens being planned in other cities. But not everyone was celebrating. Across town, in a sleek law office high above the streets, Mr. Gaines sat at a polished table with 2 men in expensive suits. His eyes were sharp, no trace of the corporate puppet he'd been when McDonald's fired him. "So let me get this straight," Gaines said, leaning back. "You want me to help bring down Denzel Washington and this foundation? Why?" "Let's just say his little crusade is making certain corporations very uncomfortable," replied one of the lawyers, his voice smooth as silk. "And you think I'm the key to stopping him?" Gaines asked, a trace of amusement in his tone. "You were on the inside when this all started. You know the narrative they're spinning isn't the full truth." Gaines smirked. "It's not about truth. It's about power." "Exactly," the lawyer said. "And we're prepared to make it worth your while." Gaines tapped his fingers on the table, considering. "All right, let's make some noise." Back at the community kitchen, Ethan was stirring a pot of vegetable stew when the doors opened and a hush fell over the room. Mrs. Harlow entered, her steps slow but steady. She no longer wore the tattered coat Ethan remembered from that rainy night. Instead, she wore a simple but elegant dress, her hair combed neatly back. "Mrs. Harlow," Ethan said softly, setting down the ladle. She smiled warmly. You remembered me. How could I forget? Denzel approached and greeted her with a gentle handshake. Welcome. This place exists because of you, you know. Mrs. Harlow chuckled. Because of me? I didn't do anything. You reminded us all of what really matters, Denzel replied. Ethan led her to a seat at the head table, then returned to the kitchen to finish plating the first round of meals. As the opening ceremony began, Denzel addressed the crowd. This kitchen isn't just a building, it's a promise. A promise that we will honor acts of kindness, no matter how small. That we will lift up the people who choose humanity over policy, even when no one's watching. Applause erupted. But just as the first meals were being served, a reporter's phone buzzed with an incoming alert. Her brow furrowed as she read the headline. Whistleblower claims meals of respect built on false narrative. Former McDonald's manager speaks out. Within minutes, news vans began arriving outside the kitchen. Reporters shouted questions as they pushed through the doors. Mr. Rivera, how do you respond to allegations that you orchestrated this entire situation for personal gain? Denzel, are you aware of the claims that your foundation is exploiting workers' stories for publicity? Ethan's face went pale. Clara grabbed his hand tightly. Denzel raised a hand to silence the reporters. We'll address this, he said firmly. But not here. Not today. Later, in the quiet of his office, Denzel sat with Ethan and Clara. This is Gaines, Denzel said calmly. He's trying to flip the narrative. Ethan buried his face in his hands. What if people believe him? What if this all comes crashing down? Then we fight back, Denzel said. With truth. Clara looked between the two men. How? We'll hold a press conference tomorrow, Denzel said. We'll tell the real story, and Mrs. Harlow will be there to tell hers. At dawn, Mrs. Harlow sat in the kitchen with Ethan, sipping coffee. You're scared, she said gently. Ethan nodded. They're saying I'm a fraud, that I did all this for attention. Mrs. Harlow reached across the table and took his hand. People like them don't understand kindness because they've forgotten how to see it. But I see you, Ethan, and I know the truth.